Big Pharma just took a massive loss at the Supreme Court, and it means lower drug prices for millions of Americans. In this episode of Care Talk, Merith Basey, the CEO of Patients for Affordable Drugs, breaks down the Supreme Court's decision to reject pharmaceutical industry lawsuits challenging Medicare drug price negotiation under the Inflation Reduction Act. We discuss what this ruling actually means, which drugs have already been negotiated, how much patients stand to save, and what Big Pharma's next move might be. Welcome to Care Talk Live, a weekly American healthcare policy show and podcast where we explain how healthcare works or doesn't work and get you answers. I'm Laura Packard, cancer survivor and healthcare advocate, here to help you. Be sure to subscribe to my channel or podcasts wherever you get your podcasts to get future Care Talk shows. Merith shares the inside story from the front lines of the legal fight and explains why this moment is a turning point for patients, not just policy wonks. If you or someone you love relies on expensive prescription medications, this conversation matters. So welcome to Merith Basey, the CEO of Patients for Affordable Drugs.
Hi, Laura.
So let's start with what are these lawsuits that the Supreme Court just dismissed? What's this all about?
So this is really exciting because it's a really big deal for patients on Medicare and actually for taxpayers and anyone who might eventually be on Medicare, which is all of us, right? So back in 2022, there was a law that we refer to as the prescription drug law, but officially it was called the Inflation Reduction Act. And in that, there were key drug pricing reforms that capped the price of insulin, for example, and there's a copay cap in general. But one of these key pieces was called Medicare negotiation. And the program allowed Medicare for the very first time to negotiate the price of the most expensive and most commonly used drugs that Medicare patients require. And what these lawsuits did, in 2023, the pharmaceutical industry filed 10 lawsuits trying to stop that program from happening. They wanted to keep their monopoly on these high-priced drugs. And what the ruling means is that patients will see the negotiated prices continue. It means the program will continue, and it means lower prices for patients, a win for taxpayers because we don't have to pay the prices that we've been forced to pay for more than 20 years.
So the Inflation Reduction Act, as you mentioned, the prescription drug affordability law was passed a few years ago, and there's already been a few rounds of drug price negotiations. So are patients on Medicare seeing lower prices right now, or is this will they take effect later?
So for the first 10 drugs that were negotiated, we began to see those very first prices come into effect on January 1st of this year. So it has been some time coming, but you'll see 10 drugs, and some of those are some of the most expensive in the world, and they are covered by Medicare. And patients all across the country, we have patients in every single state, in every single congressional district. And for people on Medicare, they are beginning to see those lower prices as of January 1st. Judy Aiken is one of those patients. She's from Maine. And one of those drugs is called Enbrel. And before it was $7,000 per month, and now it's $2,300 per month. So it's a significant price reduction. We think there's a lot further to go, but those are the first prices that you're going to see this year. And then next year, we'll see another 15 drugs and so on and so forth. So we're expecting to see 60 drugs. You can see all of them on medicarenegotiation.org. And those prices will come into effect as we go forward. But that's not where we're stopping, because we really need those prices to go beyond just the Medicare program. Americans need lower drug prices now. They don't need to wait. And so we're hoping to, in coalition with our other allies like yourself, to continue to push and build on this program now that the courts have said, hey, this is constitutional, this is here to stay, this is just the beginning for patients in the US.
Which is great news, but as you pointed out, Medicare is only a part of our country. There are millions of Americans on Medicare, and there are many more millions of Americans that aren't yet. So what can we do to lower drug prices for everybody, given that America pays the highest prices in the world for these prescriptions?
Great question. And you're right. Like 1 in 3 Americans right now cannot afford to fill their prescriptions. And it shouldn't be that way. Certainly not in the United States of America. And we know that the primary reason is because of the power of the pharmaceutical industry, who attempts to maintain their monopolies, like we've just mentioned, and to game the system so that they can keep those monopolies for as long as possible, meaning that they can charge Americans the highest prices in the world for as long as possible. So one of the ways to lower prices is to push for bills in Congress. There's a number of them that are bipartisan and that have left committee. And what they do is they tackle some of the shady tactics that the pharmaceutical industry uses to manipulate the patent system and to keep prices as long as possible. There's one particular bill right now called Ethic, which looks at a particular tactic called a patent thicket. And if you imagine literally a thicket of patents, like a thicket, whether it's a bush or a tree, but that's the idea, right? That they patent every single piece of a drug, maybe also the delivery device, to ensure that other competitors that may want to enter the market have to go through a very lengthy and expensive litigation process in order to bring their drug to market. So it is essentially a loophole that forces Americans to pay the prices that we're currently paying for medication, but it doesn't have to be that way. So we've been pushing for a number of bills, including this one, and we would love for folks to get on board and call Congress to push for these lower prices.
And we've also had a few shows where we've talked about what's happening in the states, like Colorado and Maryland, that have prescription drug affordability boards that are working to make these maximum fair prices available for everybody, not just people on Medicare. But it seems to me that doing this state by state is helpful to the people in those states, but we really need Congress to act if we want everybody, regardless of their state, to pay a fair price for their medications.
Absolutely. And Congress needs to ensure that the new prices that we're getting through Medicare for some of the most expensive, the most commonly used drugs can be applied to the commercial market. Everybody deserves access to medications that they need at prices they can afford. And they have an opportunity right now. 9 out of 10 Americans, and we know that 9 out of 10 Americans don't agree on much, but they agree on the need for Congress to lower drug prices. And they also understand how important it is that this happens soon, given that more than 60% of Americans are really concerned about healthcare costs this year. And so I think this is going to be top of mind for a lot of people in the coming months as they're making decisions about who to vote for and why.
Now, what pharmaceutical companies will say, it's not our fault. It's those PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers, that they're pointing the finger at PBMs, and PBMs point the finger at pharmaceutical manufacturers. So everybody's trying to pass blame and not do anything to lower prices. What do you say to pharmaceutical execs that would say it's not actually our fault?
Listen, Americans know that the pharmaceutical industry is responsible for driving the high prices in this country. And the polling shows that. They can no longer pretend that Americans don't understand that they are one of the primary forces for maintaining these high prices. But PBMs are also responsible, and we've also called them out too. And it's funny that you mentioned that the fact that they're both blaming each other, because we've talked about this idea of, perhaps you've seen the meme of Spider-Man where they're both pointing at each other. That's exactly what's happening with PBMs and with pharma. But pharma is the industry that sets prices. We don't negotiate all drugs in the way that other high-income countries do. And that was also part of why this Medicare negotiation program was so important, because that's the biggest lever that we have, is to negotiate drug prices and also be able to engage and help set a fair price at the beginning. Because right now, the industry decides exactly what price we're going to pay and then continues to increase prices more than twice a year annually. And this is why we have the crisis that you see today.
So what would you say to pharmaceutical execs? First of all, they, like I said, they would say it's PBM's fault. It's not us. Second, they would say, well, we won't be able to invent any more cures if you cut our outrageous profits in the United States. What do you say to that?
That old chestnut. That's they always cry that there'll be no innovation, but the data tells a different story. We know that patients who more than patients better understand the need for balance, right? We need access to new innovations, right? We need those cures, but we also need them at prices we can afford, because if drugs don't work, people can't afford them. And we also know that NIH is the largest funder of biomedical research in the world. It is the public, it is the taxpayer that is actually driving the innovation from basic research all the way through to phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials. And of course, the industry is involved. They do invest money, but we also know that they spend on average about 2 to 4 times on sales and marketing than they do on R&D. So it's a false choice, but it's also one that I think most Americans now understand, that with the compensation and the buybacks and the shady practices, that it doesn't have to be this way.
So this was good news from the Supreme Court about some lawsuits, but there are still some lawsuits out there that threaten drug price negotiation. Is that right?
Yes. So it's pretty much the end of the road for 6 of these specific lawsuits. And they are the companies that were producing some of the medications that were up for negotiation. So they tried, they have more funding, they're extremely well resourced, right? So they were trying everything they could to try to stop this program. There are 4 suits remaining, but we are hopeful, given that the judges thus far and at different levels of the court system have all ruled the same way. So far, it's been 17 rulings in favor of patients and 0 for the industry. And we expect and hope that that will continue.
Well, thanks for joining us. And where can people get updates on these lawsuits?
You can find the updates specifically on the lawsuits at fightpharma.org. Otherwise, you can find us at patientsforaffordabledrugs.org.
Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And this is a reminder that we have free or low-cost healthcare resources available on our website at healthcarevoices.org/caretalk. So check it out. Please text or call in your health insurance and healthcare questions at 202-838-6837, and we'll answer them in future episodes. And now our experts will answer your health insurance questions. So welcome to Louise Norris, Health Insurance and Healthcare Reform Analyst at HealthinsuranceOrg, and Diane Archer, the founder and president of Just Care USA. So let's start, Diane, with some news about Medicare and drug prices.
Yeah, there is a little bit of good news for people who are obese and who are looking to take a GLP-1 if they have Medicare. Beginning next month, Medicare is going to cover the GLP-1s for these 13 million people under a new pilot program. To date, Medicare has only covered these drugs for people with diabetes, cardiovascular issues, and sleep apnea. So under the pilot, people will pay as little as $50 a month for their GLP-1 drug. Unfortunately, that $50, though, will not count towards their Medicare Part D deductible or their out-of-pocket drug costs. So that is an issue. It will add to their drug costs, but still a low cost for the GLP-1. And it will be super helpful for a lot of people. At the same time, the full monthly cost of the drugs is going to be $245. So taxpayers could end up paying literally tens of billions of dollars just for this pilot program. And it could also drive up Medicare premiums. So there's good news for the people who need the drug. And then there is concerning news for taxpayers and actually for everyone with Medicare who will likely see their Part B premiums increase or their Part D premiums increase as a result of this new pilot program.
Thank you, Diane. And that it's important to note that price, that cost caps are great for patients, but if they haven't done anything about the high price of the drug, that means somebody else is picking up the difference. And as you mentioned, this means the Medicare program is paying the difference there, and that affects the Medicare Trust Fund, and that affects Medicare premiums for everybody. So as you said, good news, bad news. So next, I got another Medicare question for you. This was a comment from Hillary Beautifile on YouTube, who said that Medicare no longer covers preventative sonograms for breasts. And 43% of women aged 40 to 73 have dense breast tissue and require sonograms. It was covered as of 2025. But Hillary believes in 2026 it has to be diagnostic to be paid for. So Diane, do you have any updates or thoughts on this?
Yes, of course I do. So the answer here is that Hillary is very correct. It is true that until this year, Medicare paid in full for breast sonograms once a year, preventive care, in addition to paying in full for a mammogram once a year. But as of January of this year, Medicare only covers 80% of the cost of a sonogram when it is medically necessary and only after you have met your Part B deductible. So if you have retiree coverage, Medigap, or Medicaid, that could pick up the remaining 20% that Medicare doesn't pay. And then the question becomes, well, what does it mean for this sonogram to be medically necessary? And Medicare has spelled out that in order for it to cover a breast sonogram going forward, you will need it to check for implant issues, to plan radiation treatment, to evaluate breast lumps in people who are pregnant or nursing, to distinguish between different types of masses, or assessing the stability of a mass that's hard to see on a mammogram. So if your doctor believes it's medically necessary for you to get a breast sonogram for any of these reasons, then Medicare will cover 80% of the cost as of this year. And then if you have supplemental coverage, that should pick up the rest. And people should note that Medicare does cover a large range of preventive care services in full, meaning you do not have to meet your deductible in order to get these services and not pay anything out of pocket. And that includes an annual wellness visit, routine vaccinations, including COVID vaccines, cancer screenings, cardiovascular screenings, and a lot more. So talk to your doctor to make sure you get the preventive screenings and vaccines you need. Medicare will pay for it.
Thank you, Diane. And our next question is from Moon Prism on Reddit, who said that they received a notification from their doctor's office about an outstanding balance from February. That balance is due to an initial visit with a doctor, and it's being billed as out of network. But Moon Prism has seen this doctor multiple times since then, with the code being under his name, and all subsequent visits are covered because he is in network. So how do you fix this billing error that has resulted in a medical bill that shouldn't be there? Louise.
Yeah, so this is always frustrating when stuff like this happens. It's unfortunately more common than it should. It sounds like in this case, the error was on the part of the medical office, not the insurance plan. It sounds like they billed it under the wrong provider's name. I'm not sure if they billed it under the clinic name or under a separate provider. Sometimes you'll find that within one facility, different providers might rent time in that space. They aren't all always on the same insurance network. But whatever it is, it sounds like if subsequent bills have been processed as in-network by the health plan that were with that same medical provider, it sounds like they just billed the first one with the wrong provider identifying details on there. So one of the forms you sign when you go to get medical treatment is acknowledging that if for some reason your health insurance doesn't pay, you're responsible for it. So this is definitely a situation where the patient does need to keep following up so that they don't end up responsible for the bill. But it sounds like it should be if you contact the provider's office and let them know, what it looks like this was billed incorrectly. They should rebill it. Sometimes what I've found is helpful if for some reason they push back on that. I doubt they would, but if for some reason they do, you can get a three-way call with the health plan and the provider's office, and then it's harder for anybody to keep pushing the issue back to the other one if everybody's on the phone together.
Is there any kind of time limit for dealing with these old bills? Can somebody come back to you and bill you for services from last year or 3 years, 5 years ago? How does that work?
I mean, we do sometimes we have heard from people who have received bills from prior years. I think, there's states can impose rules and restrictions, but yes, you will sometimes have bills from, sometimes people don't even have that insurance anymore and have to still jump through these hoops. As long as you're having an open dialogue with the provider's office, they're unlikely to send you to collections if you are actively working with them on it and providing them updates about what's going on. And in this case, it sounds like it was the provider's office that made the error in the first place. So, even though it sounds like in this case several months have elapsed, as long as you're keeping them in the loop, you're not likely to get sent to collections while you're still working on it actively with them.
Mm-hmm. And so this might be a good time to suggest to people that if you have had a lot of medical services in a year, a hospital or chronic illness or whatever, it might be good to keep your old insurance cards around if you change providers in case, a bill from last year shows up that you were not expecting and you have to deal with an old insurance company. How long would you keep old insurance cards around?
I mean, I would keep records. I would say if there was a year where you had a lot of medical care, keeping track of your EOBs as you go. So making sure that and I know this is easier said than done when you're coping with a serious medical event. Obviously, if you're going through cancer treatment or you've had a heart attack or you've got a baby in NICU, sifting through medical bills is not the top of most people's priority list, but it really does make sense to at least keep everything together in one folder, either electronically or in an actual folder where you keep all the explanation of benefit forms that you get from your health plan, and just make sure that they match up with the bills that you're getting from medical offices. Sometimes you see a bunch of providers all in a short period of time, and they all submit bills to your insurance. Your insurance is processing them as they come in, but they might not that might not be in the same order that you saw those providers. So you might end up getting a bill from a provider you saw later on, even though you thought you'd already met your deductible from the previous ones, but it's because the previous one maybe hadn't submitted their claim yet. So it doesn't necessarily have to be in chronological order, but you do want to, at least at some point in that process, if you're seeing lots of providers over a short or long period of time, just make sure that the bills you're getting match up with your EOBs that you're getting from your health plan, and that you aren't actually paying more than your maximum out of pocket. The only reason you should ever go above your health plan's stated maximum out of pocket is if you're seeing out of network providers, or if you're having some sort of treatment that's not covered by your health plan. If you're staying in network and you're getting prior authorization and following your health plan's rules, it would be really unlikely for you to have care that's not covered and that you have to actually go above your maximum out of pocket. So just sort of keeping rough track of that sort of stuff. And yes, it can definitely come in the following year. If you're, in this case, this person had this visit in February and they're dealing with the bill now, we're in June. So.
Well, thank you very much for that, Louise. And then we have another comment from YouTube from Larry Hubble, who says that you do not have to carry Part B Medicare, that you can legally opt out of Part B coverage, and you can't be forced into buying something you don't want, but you do have to sign paperwork to opt out. Larry suggests you can save some money if you do not use or need Part B coverage and opt out. Part A costs nothing as long as you've worked for 10 quarters. So keep Part A because there's no cost. So Diane, do you want to speak about that, Part B being something you can opt out of?
Yes, Part B is entirely voluntary. That said, you want to think very carefully before opting out. So let's start with the ways that you can opt out without risk. If you or a spouse has employer coverage and you or your spouse is actively working and the company employs 20 or more people, then absolutely you should be opting out of Part B if you like your employer coverage. And then you will have a special enrollment in Part B, period, when 8 months following the end of your employer coverage. During those 8 months, you can sign up for Part B without penalty and with immediate coverage, so no gap in coverage. Part B, I should add, covers all your medical services, your doctor's services, your tests, some home health care. And Part A is what covers your inpatient care. So again, if you have coverage, you can postpone enrolling in Part B without penalty. If you do not elect Part B and you are not covered under your employer plan and you're not actively working, or your spouse's employer plan and your spouse is not actively working, then it's a whole other ball game. You can be penalized for 10% of the premium for every year you delay enrolling, and you only have the right to enroll between January and March of each calendar year. So that means that if you do become sick and you need to see a doctor and you don't have coverage, you're not going to have Medicare. You're going to wait. And that could actually end up costing you a lot more than the Medicare premium. That said, the Medicare premium is not inexpensive. It's $202.90 a month this year, so over $2,000 a year. That is well worth paying for, even though it's high. It's actually only 25% of the cost of insuring you. So it's taxpayers cover the rest of that cost, the 75% that you're not paying in premiums. So while the premium is high, it protects you against financial risk should you get sick. And if you opt out, you will likely not have protection for some time. And then if you do want to get that protection, you will pay a premium penalty of 10% for every year you delay enrollment. So there are lots of reasons not to opt out of Part B unless you are covered by either your or your spouse's employer plan.
Thank you, Diane. And thank you, everyone, for joining us to learn more about the fight for lower cost prescription drugs in America and answers to your questions on health insurance and healthcare. Be sure to check out more free or low-cost healthcare resources on our website at healthcarevoices.org/caretalk. Please text or call in your health insurance and healthcare questions to 202-838-6837, and we'll answer them in future episodes. Join us next week for more. Be sure to subscribe to my channel or podcast wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Laura Packard, and this is Care Talk.